According to the data that you've entered, you are in stage 2 for algebra geometry section. Now what does this mean? First of all, what it means is that as far as the concepts that are tested, you know quite a few concepts here. Okay, now there may be few gaps, but they are not really that many that you need to go through the entire course. So essentially, because you know the concepts decently well, going through the entire course is not required. Okay, it's up to you, but you don't need to go through the entire course. You can actually selectively bridge those conceptual gaps, and we'll talk about how you can do that. So that's the first thing that being in stage 2 means. What's the second thing? The second thing that it means is that today you have a process that you follow intuitively to answer questions, but because it's so very important in the context of the GMAT to have a very, very solid process, you need to still solidify that in that process that you are right now utilizing intuitively. So the main thing that you need to do in stage 2 is solidify this process, solidify it. Okay, that's what you need to do. So whatever intuitively you are applying, you need a much stronger structure to that process so that you can solidify it and you can use it in a scalable fashion, and you can reproduce that process across every question for this particular section. And secondly, again, concepts wise, you're good. You probably just need to bridge a few gaps, and that's something which we can talk about. So given this information, let's talk about how is it that you should be preparing for stage 2 for algebra and geometry. Now we teach this section of GMAT Quant in 2 different courses, algebra and geometry. So I recommend that you follow the steps that I outlined first for algebra and then for geometry. So how should you do stage 2 for algebra? Your first step is to learn the method to solve questions pertaining to algebra topic. For this, you need to solve the application files and practice files in your course, which means that for every module in algebra, you solve the application file 1.2 and then 1.3 practice quiz. Likewise, in module 2, you solve 2.2 and 2.3. Okay. So think about an application file as a guided exercise, okay, in which you first solve question number 1 and then you review the solution of this question in detail. Okay. Essentially what this allows you to do is this allows you to compare and contrast your approach versus the approach that has been explained in the solution. Okay. So that's what this thing allows you to do. Just spell contrast, right? Contrast. Okay. All right. Now then what you do is you apply these learnings that you have from this exercise onto the next questions. The next question that follow, question number 2, and then you again review the solution of this question, and then you repeat the process here. Okay, so essentially as you apply these learnings to the subsequent questions in the file, what ends up happening is that your skill set to solve questions really gets enhanced. Okay, and the more critical you are in this step of reviewing the solution, the more good learnings you will have from this exercise, and the more diligent you are over here to apply these learnings onto the following questions, the more your skill set will improve. Okay. Now another very important thing to understand is that when you are solving these questions, I do not want you to time yourself. Do not time yourself. Why? Because the goal over here is for you to learn the process as much as possible from these purpose-built files, and you will not be able to learn the process in the intended manner if you do these files in the timed environment. So do not time yourself. Do not waste these questions by solving these questions in a hurry. Okay, so keep in mind these 3 points and carry forward. Now another important point is that as you solve these questions, you may be able to identify certain conceptual gaps that exist. At that point, you simply go through the associated concept file to bridge that gap. For example, let's say you're solving module 5 quadratic equations application file, and you realize that there are some concepts that you are rusty with regards to quadratic equations. So at that point in time, go back to 5.1 activity and revise your concept, revise the concepts pertaining to quadratic equations. Now, another very important point while solving quant questions is that do not be looking out for shortcuts to solve questions. Focus on the process that has been given to you in the file, in the application solution or in the regular solution. Okay. Now let's take an example. Let's say you solve a question and you solve that question correctly by using, let's say, number substitution or plugging in numbers. Okay. Now the solution instead utilized a different method. Okay, a step-by-step method. Now at that point in time, I don't want you to ignore the solution just because you were able to solve the question correctly and just because you feel that your solution is a lot more efficient. Okay, why am I saying that? Yes, you were able to get the answer correctly, but your learnings from that question will not really help you with that higher order application of those concepts on questions that actually do require that same step-by-step process. Okay, so at this point in time when you're learning, do not go for shortcuts. Okay, let the course teach you the step-by-step process so that you get to that higher percentile level so that you can carve out your own shortcuts. Okay, so focus on the process, do things step by step. So to reiterate, you are starting at stage 2 of algebra and geometry. Follow this sequence. First, do the application files and practice files in all the modules in algebra. Then you cement your methods utilizing Scholarium. Again, you're only doing algebra questions here. Once you're done with that, come back to the course, go follow the same sequence for geometry. That is, you first do application files and practice files in each module in geometry course. Once you're done with that, then you cement the methods and the concepts utilizing Scholarium again for geometry. Okay, so with this information, you're all set to get started with stage 2 of algebra geometry. When you reach the stage of Scholarium, I will be there to guide you as to how to utilize Scholarium to cement your methods. Happy learning!